Hey everybody, I hope you had a good week. Sorry I haven't really been around much. It was a long, emotionally draining week, and there just hasn't been that much specific stuff to do lately. So, here, let me just run this. Anyways, chat, for some reason, I don't know. Restream chat is good for some things and bad for others, but it is what it is. So, if you guys want, you can follow below as I'm doing this. There's a link to this survey in the chat. So let's just go into this. So ever since Sargon's whole 8 questions to the alt-right, I've been thinking I should try to do something maybe a bit better. Maybe try to do like an actual kind of political scientist study. Try to look at the main I guess kind of the opinions on some core issues, overall disposition, maybe try to get an idea of what the different views are out there. So what I did is I spent a lot of free time in the last week coming up with and testing a survey that is designed to that purpose. Now, obviously, there's a lot of limitations. The big issue, of course, being I have no way to do a random sample. I don't have like a pre-existing list to draw a random sample from. I can't. I can't provide a margin of error, so it's just going to be directionally only. But I figured I'd try to at least get a decent sample size for this. So this maxes out at 2,500. I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask some friends of mine to post this. So hopefully we can kind of get some interesting results. So my idea here was to, yeah, like I said, make a survey. So there's a link to it below. Please fill it out. Once this is all done, I'll actually do some statistical analysis on this, and it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm just going to go through this and kind of give what my logic was and kind of maybe explain it a bit more. Okay, so let's begin. So this is my study of alternative political views. So let's just go through this thing. Okay, I should probably fix that. That should not be happening. Anyway, so first one we have, what broad political category would you put yourself into? So for this one, I was trying to be exhaustive without going too far into special snowflake. I'm sure I'll get a bunch of people who put like national syndicalism or something down here, but there's only so much you can do. Stuff's hard. So we have conservative, so that's just kind of, I guess you could say normie conservative or like kind of Pat Buchanan style stuff. So yeah, so you have conservative, we have libertarian, once again, pretty straightforward. We have any variant of fascism or pseudo fascism. Like, I guess you could say Peronism or Baathism are basically fascism. It's the same idea. It's populist nationalism that's kind of syncretic. So I just decided to include it in the same general category. And National Bolshevism is kind of a Russian adaptation. Then we have NatSoc, just because I expect that to be a pretty large category, or at least a category some people get, and I do think it is ideologically different enough from fascism. We have traditionalist, so once again, people who define themselves as being theocratic, as being a monarchist, as being a reactionary, etc. Now, this is not just intended for people who identify as alt-right. It's kind of intended more broadly for people who just frequent these circles. Like if you watch any of my content or you watch any of Millennial Woes or Rainey's content, regardless of how you would politically define yourself, this is for you. So then we have socialist, and if you aren't really sure, we have broadly right-winged and broadly left-wing, and then centrist. So I'm going to go with broadly right-wing because that's basically how I would go with it. Very briefly, in one sense or left, how would you classify your economic views? So initially I was going to have a range of different ideas here, but The issue is there's just too many, and it's too nuanced. So what I'll probably do is once this is done, I will read these and recode them. So I guess in my case it would be regulated capitalism with developmental state. Okay. So let's get into... Ooh, I'll have to fix that. I don't know why that's not working. Okay. Well, that's what these tests are for, to go through and to try to fix things that are causing issues. Oh, it's just because I was moving my cursor over it. So here we go for question 2. We have, please rank the answers below. You may list any number of answers. In general, the biggest factor in determining human behavior, both at a personal and societal level, is... So this is kind of trying to get into some of the stuff Sargon was saying and kind of some of the divides, I guess, kind of between what you'd say the right and maybe the far right. So, like, what are the biggest factors that influence behavior? So is it race? Is it culture? Is it religion? Is it the role of the individual? Is it economics, etc.? So for my part, I'm going to go biology, then culture, then religion, then I think I put 4 and then 5. So I do it pretty similar to how I would have it. So once again, you can do these in any order you want. They'll just rearrange. I guess like Sargon or someone would put that as number 1, and some of the others would be put below. So go with that. Government's involvement in education. So this is, once again, this was kind of something Sargon suggested, and I thought it was like a fair one to put in. So this was, how much of a role do you think the government should have in education? So we have 1 to 10, with 1 being no involvement. Is the default survey order randomly sorted? No, it isn't. I kind of deliberately chose it in the order it's in. And maybe or maybe not, you'll see why. How involved do you think the government should be in education? So obviously with number 1, it's education should be completely 100% private. And with 10, there's no private education, and you basically have like a propaganda school system. So I would kind of imagine 5 as being fairly similar to what we have now, where you have both a public and a private school system that are competing with one another. And you could have vouchers or you could not have vouchers. But it's kind of a mixture of the two. So I thought that would be interesting to keep in mind, because it's kind of trying to get at how authoritarian or how libertarian or how direct a role people in these circles want the state to have in society. So I'd probably go around maybe 4, because I like private and religious schools with a voucher system. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a privileged existence and 10 being planned demographic replacement, how much discrimination/hostility do white people face in modern Western society? So this is, I think it's a question he asked, but I had gone through a couple different versions of this. The first was, it was a checklist. Then there was a couple of different ones that I went through. But I kind of settled on this to try to be a little more neutral. So there's kind of all range between here. There's like, I guess like 3 or 4 would be no difference. Like 6 or 7 would be affirmative action. 8 or 9 would be kind of getting into mass immigration. So I'm going to go with a 10, because I do think there's forced demographic replacement. Let's see here. Please choose one of the following, even if none of the options exactly align with your opinion. Choose the one that best represents it. So this is on abortion, which I find is a very contentious topic in these circles, and I was kind of interested to get an idea of what kind of the average person had to say about it. So I kind of went with the big categories. Generally speaking, whenever you see one of these, you have banned in all cases. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Banned in most cases. Now, I've done research on this in the past, and liberals will always make it sound like that rape, incest, or threats to the mother's life are most abortions, but it's literally like I think 97% are elective. Then there's just available upon request, which is the default in most Western countries. And then I threw this one in. I have different views on abortion legality for other racial ethnic groups because that is a fairly common view in these circles that it's okay so long as non-whites are doing it. So, despite kind of being pro-life myself, I actually would go to this one because I don't think a total abortion ban is possible. I think that people are so inherently opposed to it in the case of rape and incest or threat to the mother's life. I don't think it's practical to ban it. That's not to say I don't think it's wrong to abort a baby conceived by rape, but I don't think it's practical. I don't think it's doable, and I think it leads to the principle being challenged more. So for pragmatic reasons, I take that view. Let's see, homosexuality in society. Once again, another very contentious issue in these circles. You have people who are extremely against it and people who are so for it they talk about the natural aristocracy and that kind of thing. So, like, if we go into kind of the range here, so we have obviously number one, which is basically what most Western country have, that not only is not only is homosexuality legal, but it's also just completely tolerated, and you have gay marriage legal. So then we have option two, where it's legal, but at the same time, it's not. There's no gay marriage isn't legal. So marriage is defined as being between a man and a woman, but despite that, it's trying to think of how to describe it. Beyond that, let's see, choice hover. I just am fixing choice hover. I don't know why it's stuck to white. There we go. Hopefully that'll fix it. I hadn't figured that. Just figuring that out as we go along. Okay, so then we have legal, but public displays of it and promotion should be illegal. So that's kind of what Russia and I think Poland and some other countries basically have, where it's legal, but they just don't want it in public. So then it's technically illegal, but they don't actively enforce it provided it's not in public. And there's kind of a don't ask, don't tell. Damn it, you changed it while I was answering. Oh, sorry. Did it reset that? Sorry. Basically what I was just figuring out as I was doing this is that disappears when you hover over it, so I was just trying to fix that stuff. So there's that, then there's completely illegal, and it saves your results. Illegal with homosexuality and homosexual acts being pursued and punished even if they take place privately. So I don't know, I guess they would do that in Muslim countries where they would like just try to search it. So I personally kind of go with one of these two. I didn't see what was so bad about don't ask, don't tell. That I think worked pretty well. I don't really see there as being a problem with that. So I think it's fine. The administrator has changed it. Okay. Okay. I was just fixing it so it doesn't disappear. Okay. So we'll go with that. Please choose one of the below. Even if none of the options align with your opinion, choose the one that best represents it. So this one was about the media. Sargon asked this, and I thought it was kind of not a bad question, to be honest. Because once again, it gets into how much propaganda you kind of want to use and how much political education you kind of, or you know what, I'm probably that's okay. I don't know. So the media should be, so we have private and completely free from government control. So once again, there's no subsidies towards the media. the government just has a completely laissez-faire attitude towards it. So then we have private and mostly free, but government should have the right to regulate and censor it. So that's basically how a lot of Western countries function. So if you want to censor, I don't know, like degeneracy in the media, if you want to, I guess you could say, censor fake news. Now, kind of to be fair to the entire concept of fake news, there is a lot of fake news. I mean, it's not just right wing stuff. If you go on Facebook or a lot of news sites, they'll just post stories like about people dying. They'll post stories about, like, I remember there was one for Black Lives Matter where it was some like black guy who was getting his life together, who was a Trump supporter, who got killed by Black Lives Matter, and it was entirely fabricated. And so that kind of thing. Also, just, I don't know, some basic regulations. So then you have both public and private, with the two in competition with one another. So that is how some countries like Canada, Australia, and Britain work, and I guess America too, where you will have a public media of some description. There's a couple, I guess, kind of different ways you could go about it. You could just have something like TVO, because in Ontario we have Television Ontario, and most of what TVO is just educational programming. Like, they'll show Arthur, they'll show nature documentaries. They occasionally will have like shows where they interview people. I think that's harmless. If you want to have just that sort of thing, that's fine. As regards to a state sponsored media enterprise, I think there's a wide range of attitudes you can have on that. So then you have just entirely owned and controlled by the government, or I guess maybe or controlled by the government, because that's kind of how it is in like China in a lot of places. So yeah, so I'd probably go with that. I don't think it's really a problem to have kind of a mixture of it. Let's see here. So, role of religion. So once again, trying to kind of flesh out something that I think a lot of people... Does this question assume that your ideal state has already been established? I admit, like, some of these are supposed to be kind of a bit ambiguous. Like, once we get to the last question, I'm kind of just trying to get people's reactions. I was just trying to limit special snowflake answers. And I don't say that to be mean, just there's so many different opinions as things like that. So, role of religion in society. Number one, there should be an active campaign against religion in general. Not only should the state be secular, but it should be openly anti-religious. So there are some people in these circles who are anti-religious. There's not too many, but I find some of the libertarians can kind of go in that direction. So, next one, no state religion. Religion is an entirely private matter, and the government should remain out of it and favor no religion or lack thereof over another. So, pretty straightforward. So, just kind of under that system, I don't know, it makes sense to me. That's kind of what we theoretically have in the West, where government tries to stay out of it, but in practice they don't. But I'm sure that makes sense. Then we have no state religion, but the state should not treat all religions the same, offering preferential treatment to some and repressing others. So this is something some kind of right-wing, not far-right or alt-right, but some right-wing people have said. Oh, spelling, adherents of other faiths are barred. Oh, okay. Thank you for that. I will just copy and paste that, and I will fix that later. Part of why I'm doing this is just to get people's stuff. Let's see, cancel. There we go. So, under that kind of structure, you would say, like, you could prevent the building of mosques or ban the Quran or something, or outlaw Scientology but not place any restrictions on Christianity, or you could allow, I don't know, Christian churches to carry out carry out like some welfare programs but not allow other ones. So that's just kind of a moderate position. Then we have a specific or general state religion. Now, what I mean by general state religion is you don't specify a denomination. Like there are Muslim countries, I think like Kazakhstan, where it says just Islam. Like the official religion is just Islam. It doesn't specify Sunni or Shia. And in some countries, like if I had control of Canada or America, I would say the state religion is Christianity, just Christianity. I wouldn't specify Catholicism because it's not a large enough majority. So you had states like this kind of historically, but I guess it wasn't. Yeah, so I think probably a good example of this would be the Polish Lithuanian Commonwealth, where the state religion was Catholicism, but they didn't really actively persecute the minority faiths. So you kind of have a, yeah, so that's kind of that sort of thing. Then you have a single state religion, which is actively promoted, and adherents of other faiths are barred celebrating their faith and or outright persecuted, aka most Muslim countries. So I'm going to go with that because I think that's fine. Now we have gender equality. So this is another kind of one I took from Sargon, which I think is a kind of an interesting question. So select one of the options below, etc. So this is once again trying to get your specific kind of a general idea. So the role of women in society should be the same as men, enjoying all the same educational opportunities, professions, and political power. So that's basically how things are now. Women can serve in the army, women can vote. There's no legal distinction between the two. Then there is option 2. Women should have similar educational opportunities and professions. They can be doctors, that kind of thing. But, oh, thank you later, Gator. So hopefully I'll get enough people to kind of be able to come up with, like, I'm intending to actually do some statistical analysis on this and kind of maybe do a series of videos on it. But should be excluded from voting / political power, police, and military. So that is actually the position I would take personally. I think democracy didn't actually work that poorly before female suffrage. I think generally speaking, there are some women who can kind of compete with men at that level. The issue is, if you look at it in a lot of cases, a lot of women would prefer to be homemakers or would prefer to raise children or have more children. Just economic realities and social pressure make that difficult. Because once we had women kind of entering the mainstream workforce en masse, it put a lot of downward pressure on wages. So that's why you always like hear, oh, you could buy a house and a new car every year and have like 6 kids on your salary back in the 1950s. Despite an increase in productivity and an increase in the workforce, wages didn't go up by the same amount. So then we kind of have what it was prior to kind of the Industrial Revolution. Women should be restricted to unskilled labor and barred from post-secondary education, which I guess is kind of a more edgy view to take on the whole thing. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Then we have women's sole duties as homemakers, and they should not be able to participate in public life or seek employment outside the home, aka, yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty straightforward, aka Muslim countries. So we're gonna go with that. Let's see, ideal state culture. So I did one for culture and one for race / ethnicity. Now, when I say ethnic racial, I mean either one. So it could be either one of the two. Because some people would say, I think you have to differentiate the two because the idea of kind of a racial state is more of a New World idea. Like the concept of whiteness exists in Europe, but if you were to say to like a Slovakian, we want a white state with like, you can let like an unlimited number of Hungarians and Germans in, I think they're going to dislike that idea. But if you say, do you want like a Slovakian state, they'll say that's good. So, etc. Just another thing on women, if you look at the ideal number of children per woman, it's a lot higher than the actual birth rate. I think it's 2.8 in America, and that's after all the propaganda. So I think a lot of these things would just naturally, if you got rid of affirmative action and all these like Gives Me That programs, it would probably rebalance itself. So this is culture because some people in these circles are based civic nationalism. And there are people who have there's people who have sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here for a minute, who are racially it's the next Israeli video coming soon. I enjoyed the last one. It's coming eventually. It's coming eventually. Sorry, I have a lot of shit to do. I have one about Tommy Wiseau that's coming very soon because that is a fascinating thing. So for this one, okay, sorry. So there's people who are multicultural but monoracial, and there's people who are who are multiracial but monocultural. So I'm gonna probably go with 8 because I generally believe in monoculturalism, but it's hard. Actually, it's difficult because I'm a New Worlder, so I don't mind that America and Canada are kind of a fusion of different European ideas. So then we have, let's see here. Monocultural doesn't need a hyphenation. I know, because I've seen it with both. Monocultural hyphen. So we have the ethnic composition of a state on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being completely multi-ethnic racial and 10 being completely ethnically / racially homogenous. So you can take this, once again, these are kind of open to interpretation. You can, like I said, if you're European, you can take it to be mono-ethnic, or you can take it to be like that. If I'm going by mono-ethnicity, I'd probably take an 8, because I don't really mind immigration from other white countries so long as it's not overwhelming. Like in the aftermath of the Hungarian Revolution, Canada took in a lot of Hungarian refugees, and by and large that caused absolutely no problems. They just integrated into Canadian society, and they're hard workers, and they're good people. So, yeah. So then we have immigration. This is one I was kind of on the fence about, but I just figured why not? Because I thought it was kind of an interesting question. So there should be open door immigration. There should be kind of a point system, which is what we have in Canada, where people can immigrate, but generally speaking, they need to have like a degree in something, they need to have skills, they need to be able to support themselves. That sort of thing. So, yeah, immigrants should meet minimum standards, and immigrants from culturally incompatible countries should not be allowed to immigrate. So it's kind of a base civic nationalist thing. So that might be, okay, we can allow, I don't know, African Christians to immigrate, but not Muslims, or we can allow Filipinos to immigrate, as long like Catholic Filipinos, but not, what's it called again? Immigrants from different racial groups should not be allowed to immigrate. So that's basically kind of what America used to have. You could just have white people come in. And then we have immigrants from the same racial group but of a different ethnic group should not be allowed to immigrate. So you kind of have that. So I would probably go with this personally. And then there should be no immigration whatsoever. Okay, so then we have the Jews. So this one is kind of difficult because there's such a range of opinions on this. It's kind of hard to make it neutral. So I was just trying to take kind of a variety of different positions on this. So I think these are kind of the biggest places. So we have kind of the normie opinion, the Jews are just the same as others. We have that the Jews are more left wing and prone to social liberalism and globalism in general, but this is similar to other minority groups like blacks or Hispanics, and there isn't a wider agenda. We have, as a group, are actively pursuing an agenda of globalism and social liberalism. As an ethnocultural group, as they view it in their self-interest and or have the desire to create a borderless, mixed, and multicultural world. So, yeah, so I think that's kind of my position largely. And then there's Jews harbor deep resentment against Western white civilization, are actively working towards its destruction as revenge for real or perceived past wrongs. So yeah, I think that's a bunch of. I think that makes sense. So let's go on. So then, this is the question some people have complained about. How would you define whiteness? And I think this is a huge issue within the alt right, is the complete inability or unwillingness to touch this issue. And this is something I think Sargon made a good point of actually during his debate with Richard Spencer. Is Richard Spencer refused to where he refused to kind of answer this question of who and what is white. So people complained about this. They're like, do you mean cultural? Do you mean racial? Like, what do you mean by this? And the idea is to try to force people to provide an answer. So is it, do you identify it as something racial, etc.? Is it mainly cultural? Is it religious? So it's to try to give kind of an explanation for that. So I'm just going to skip this for the moment. So then obviously male. Let's see here. We have, what is your gender? Male. We don't have gender binary. We have a gender binary here. What is your age range? Once again, this is pretty, like, this stuff is not to try to dox anybody. I'm just legitimately curious, like, it, because the stereotype is everyone in these circles are young males. I'm kind of interested in that, so I went 25 to 34. Then we have religious beliefs. So once again, I was trying to limit. It should be, what is your sex? Okay, thank you. I actually really appreciate that, just because I had a couple people proofread this, and I tend to miss things like that, so yeah. So what religion do you most identify with? So obviously Roman Catholicism. I just put Christianity on. I guess you could just put Roman Catholic. So then we have Eastern/Oriental Orthodox. So that would be Eastern Orthodoxy. Oriental Orthodox is like the Copts or the Ethiopians or stuff like that. Basically, really old Christian denominations that aren't Catholic. Then we have Protestant, non-denominational, or just other kind of minor Christian groups. I guess what are they called again in the Czech Republic? I don't know, maybe, I'm trying to remember what they're called again. That group that's neither Catholic nor what? I don't agree with Anabaptists and Calvinists in the same category. I don't know. I will consider redoing that if it changes. Islam, obviously, that's pretty straightforward. Judaism, Eastern religion, I didn't expect a huge group. So this could be Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Shinto, kind of anything from East and Southeast Asia. So philosophical theism/spirituality. So this is non-atheistic beliefs that aren't from a revealed religion. So we have perennialism. I think most people know what that is. Deism, Platonism, Neoplatonism, panentheism. So basically anything like that. Any kind of, I guess you could say, rationalist views that just don't fit into these other categories. Paganism, neo-paganism, secular. So secular is, you aren't necessarily religious or atheistic. It's just it's the standpoint that religion isn't important in your life personally. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to people. It's just something you don't think about enough, because there are a lot of secular people in these circles who are pro-religion. They just don't go with it themselves. Then we have agnostic or atheist. You can offer no opinion, or you can say other. What is your what is your ethnic racial background? So I did a lot. I'm legitimately interested in this. If it's like what kind of the dominated thing. So I'm white European descent, and I'm Northwestern because I'm British Islander and German. So broadly white is people like from America who are like half Italian, half Irish, or German, Polish, or something like that, like who are just a mix of different kind of white stuff. So, yep, Northwestern European. I'm employed full time. Once again, this is trying to look at the concept of what is your employment status. Is everybody in these circles really professional needs? How would you describe your education level? In my case, it's postgraduate. Income range. I guess I should specify USD or CAD. I don't know. Okay, so submit. And that takes you to my YouTube channel because this is shameless self-promotion. So let's take a look at the results so far because maybe people would like to look at it. So far I have about 50 responses. So far if we look at this, we have the largest category are traditionalists. About half the people who responded classified themselves as being traditionalist. So, etc. So then we have fascist is fairly large. Broadly right-wing, which is where I'd put myself. Conservative. So anyways, this will be interesting to see where we wind up once we're done. So that's kind of interesting. Very briefly, how would you classify your economic views? Corporatism, mixed economy, American national economics, free markets, regulated capitalism. So we have a lot of good stuff here. So I will definitely be able, when we're done, to recode this into some broad categories. So that's good. Please rank the answers below. So generally speaking, race is winning by a substantial margin for the biggest part of it. Let's see, how much involvement should the government be in have in education? So people tend to see needs to be I don't know, little involvement in education seems to be winning at the moment. So I think that's interesting. I wasn't sure like where we were going to go with this, but yeah. Then we have, people overwhelmingly think white people are discriminated against. Pretty much no one so far has said they're privileged. So then we have abortion. So this is what I expected to win, is banned in all cases except in rape, incest, and threat to mother's life. That's perfectly acceptable. So, yeah. So it's interesting because there are a lot of people in these circles like Richard Spencer who are very pro-abortion. So, yeah, I think that's that'll be interesting to see where that turns out. Homosexuality is very frowned upon, which I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be this high, but it'll be interesting when this finishes to see where we net out. I don't know. I'm just going to go through the rest of it. The pie charts are difficult to read and misleading. They'll be better when I'm finished. This is their end. I'm going to actually make like real graphs and shit. This is just kind of an overview of the kind of things we can expect. So this is kind of interesting. So most people kind of have moderate opinions on this, which I expected. I was kind of interested to see how many people said no role in it. So, wow, I'm surprised by the number of people who want a specific state religion. That's very interesting, actually. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. So, there's a pretty broad range on this one. Let's see here. Yep, overwhelmingly, people hate multiculturalism. That's to be expected. This one is pretty similar. I was expecting a little more of a difference, actually. So on immigration, that's interesting. So there are actually a fair number of base civic nationalists, and we have okay, that's interesting. Let's see here. The Jews. Yep. It seems like the overwhelming majority of people think that they have an agenda against the West. So that's interesting. Other. Let's see here. Not Christians, Christ killers. And we have how would you define whiteness? Starbucks doesn't exist. A combination of genotypes and cultural norms, Caucasoid race, biological. Let's see here. The group of people that inhabits Europe. So that's okay. It'll be interesting to see what we get when we're finish this. What is your gender? So it is overwhelmingly, virtually entirely male. What is your age range? Overwhelmingly young. Religion is okay, so it is Orthodox is as high as I thought it was going to be. So actual hard atheism is not very large in these circles. But yeah. Then ethnic background, white. Let's see, what's other? Castizo, white Slav, Swedish Finnish, white with a fraction of Asian, white Hispanic. So I'll probably just recode these as white. Why is Swedish Finnish not... I don't know why he didn't just pick white European descent. White subgroup, middle European. I think that would be broadly white. Let's see here. East Asian subgroup. Okay, Southeast Asian, black subgroup. No Middle Easterners yet. We have 2 Jews so far. Let's see. Mulatto and don't know. We have employment status. And let's see your employment status. Okay, so most people are kids. Okay. I was expecting there's not very many NEETs at the moment. See, has anybody... There's no one here who's a NEET yet, which is kind of cool. Education levels well spread out, and income tends to be poor. So anyways, I hope people kind of found that interesting. So it'll be really cool to see where we kind of net out when we're done this. We already have enough to kind of start to look at the data. I'm hoping to get at least a couple hundred, maybe 1,000, and we'll have a lot of fun with this when it's done. So, yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. I hope people enjoyed this. If you want, please spread and share this, and we'll be able to get a lot of good data and a lot of good info about this. So, like I said, I'll periodically update this thing. I am actually trying to be professional, like fairly professional with this. This is not like me trying to, I don't know, do this for propaganda purposes. I'm kind of legitimately interested in seeing where we kind of net out with this whole thing. So, anyways, that's really all I have to say. I think I have to do it again. I wrote some different answers. So, what I have it set up so if you want to go in, you can change your answers. You can't submit multiple surveys, but you can finish existing ones. So, anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this and have a good rest of the weekend.